everyone. It's the first day of fall, and so of course it's time to be starting to think about tires for the winter. Before we know it, the snow's going to be flying. And so anyway, as you can see, the tires here, this is my 2003 Chevy Tahoe, and these things are worn down pretty good. They're nothing great for tires. And so anyway, I figured I better get new tires for winter. And I decided that while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put a leveling kit on here. Now, the way this thing sits right now, it's about perfectly level front to rear. I have about 37¼ inches to the fender well. And so what I'm going to do is install Supreme Suspension's 3-inch front, 2-inch rear kit, which I have 2-inch spacers I'm going to put on the rear. That'll get me 2 inches on the rear end. And then their keys for the front end, which they say will give you 3 inches. In this case, as it's sitting right now, I only want to go up about 2 to be level. And the factory keys are maxed out, pretty much completely up against as far as adjustment. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and put that lift on. And then my hubs also went bad right now, practically, which is convenient. So I got new Timken hubs here, both sides. They're both bad, so I'm going to replace them right away. And I got Bilstein shocks for front and rear. These are longer ones to work with the lift. So it's not going to be much, only 2 inches, but I didn't really want a lot, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money, so I'm just doing as cheap as I can, just putting the blocks in the rear and the new keys on the front. And the product numbers here on these shocks, just is for the benefit of anybody that may be wanting to do this same type of thing on your second generation Tahoe. The product numbers here, the rear shocks, that's a product number for the rear shocks, and there's the number for the front shocks. And since I'm putting on new rubber anyway, I decided that these wheels, you know, they work, they're okay, but they don't really look very good on this vehicle. I don't know, what do you think? But I just don't think that these wheels, they're too bright for my taste. So which looks better? This wheel or this one? I say there's no question. This is the fuel coupler 20x9 with a 20mm offset. Now the ones that are on right now have a 25mm offset. So this is going to be out just very minimally further, probably about 1/4 inch. So I do have 2-inch spacers on already. These are 17s, factory size, and 265/70/17 rubber on them. So on the 20-inch wheel, this is 20x9, I'm going with a 34-inch to a 275/65 R20 on these wheels. And I'm putting the Duratracs on, Goodyear Wrangler Duratracs, for good traction in the winter time. And also I want to point out, make it very clear what I need to do as far as trimming, because I'm sure I'm going to have to do at least a little bit of trimming, because these actually rub already on this shroud, the plastic fender liner in here. They're already rubbing right here at the front. If I wouldn't have the spacers on, it'd probably be fine, but there's sort of a bump out here, and that's causing it to hit there. So anyway, that'll probably have to be trimmed out. The rear, I'm sure, will be no problem. There's lots of clearance back there. But anyway, I just want to let you know exactly what I'm doing here, so that if anybody else wants to do this exact thing, because there's a lot of people saying on the forums and everything, some people say, oh no, that tire size will not work, and the next one says, oh, I have it on mine and it's okay. Alright, so I'm really excited to see how this thing's going to turn out. So I'm going to get to work. Alright, here's what it looks like now. And here's what it looks like after the lift before I put the new wheels and tires on. This is about 2 inches higher than what it was. All right, move over, Les Schwab. Here I come, Baldy Mountain Tire. The place to retire. These are the guys to deal with if you're in Sanders County, Montana, or surrounding areas. And just wanted to do a little shout out for these guys. So here I am, I'm gonna get these tires put on now. So we're gonna see what this looks like, how it turns out.
Do you just want right?
Ha! That doesn't look quite as extreme as it did at first, but...
Right.
Low power. So see, that's the problem. We're gonna balance them all, and if it doesn't work, you know. I want to lift that thing a little bit to this or for somebody. Oh.
All right, here I am back in my garage. With the new wheels and tires, there's definitely some clearance issues. These Duratracs are about exactly 34.5 is the exact diameter of the tire. So now with the lift I've done and the 3-inch greater diameter tires, I'm at about exactly 4 inches higher than what I was before. Now I'm not planning to take this four-wheeling, but you still should get the vehicle, the suspension flexed as much as possible and check clearance and make sure that at full flexing you got clearance all around. Now I have, like I said, I have the 2-inch spacers on here, so that helps out as far as there's no issues on the inside at all. The only issues are right here toward the outside of the wheel well. Basically the plastic shroud, I have that out. I'm going to show you exactly what I did here. Okay, this is a Z71. You see these little holes right here? The Z71s have this little bracket which was on here right like this, and I took a 5/32 drill bit, was about perfect size, and just drilled out those rivets. That came right off. I'm not too worried about the holes, they'll probably just stay there like that. This was what this was. This little clip fits inside of here. The splash guard here, okay, it hooks down on there. And these Z71 splash guards right here. So this has to come off, and then that little clip that was here. Also, when you take this splash guard out, you see this bolt right here? This bracket was bolted on there to hold the bottom of the splash guard. And so it's very simple, just pop that bolt out, take this out, and put the bolt right back in. And that is this hole on the bottom of the splash guard. There's a clip that just goes through there and clips to that bracket. Then what I did is cut this. This was the biggest issue with tire hitting, was right here. I cut this corner off. This was down here, right like that. So that's the amount of metal that I cut off of there. So that gets cut off, and that comes off. And that gives me the clearance that I need. Now the front side's not as big of an issue. Basically this bottom shroud here, mine was already broken here, but I just took a knife and cut this back a little bit as it was hitting. So anyway, doesn't look the greatest, but it's broken anyway, so I wasn't too worried about that. I didn't do anything with the painted part of the bumper here at all. So all I did was trim this off a little bit, and that's all I needed. Another issue with the fender well shroud right here, one thing to note is the shroud does not come very far below the washer fluid reservoir here. So if you're going to cut it out, just keep that in mind. I didn't even realize that when I cut mine out, and it is visible now a little bit. I probably could have got by with cutting out a little bit less, but it's okay. It's not a big issue. You can see a little bit of white below it, but that's something to keep in mind. Probably start out small and just probably don't take out any more than you need to get enough clearance. And that is pretty much it. Now let me show you what I did with the fender well liner here. All right, just to show you, this is the amount that I cut off on the driver's side of the fender well shroud. So right there, that's how much I cut out. Then on the rear side of the fender well shroud, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking a hand seamer and I'm bending the bottom part of it back. Okay, so I'm bending that down because right now it is still hitting a little bit, but I don't really want to cut it out because of the angle. You're gonna have to cut a lot out to really make much of a difference. So it's only when you're turned as sharp as you can go. It rubs a little in here. So what I'm doing is bending this backwards. See that? Angling that back so when the tread comes up, it's not catching the corner. Even if it rubs, it's not going to hurt anything. And when you back up, obviously the tread's going to be coming down, so it's not going to catch anything. So that takes care of that issue. And the passenger side is pretty much the same. I just want to point out one thing over there on the passenger side that's a little bit different. Okay, here's one thing you want to watch out for. On the passenger side, you have the coolant lines coming down here. And so when you're cutting this out, you have to be extra cautious. And I did use a Sawzall for cutting these out, and I wanted to be very careful and hit these. So I tried my die grinder, it was just too slow. So I just was extra cautious with the Sawzall, and it worked. I got this cut out. But I have a little bit of a lip here on this side. The driver's side I got back a little bit tighter, but I'm gonna let it like that just for a little extra protection. I'd rather have it hit here and tear the tire up than tear up the coolant lines. So what I did is I drilled another hole through the fender well liner, and I used this little clip, and I can just push that in there, and that gets that. Otherwise that thing would be hanging out here away from here, and that just pulls the bottom of this back in tight against there. And also what I did is the parking brake cable here, I just took a couple wire ties and tied that back here because it was out here and it would have been holding the fender well liner out too far. So I just tied that back with a couple wire ties, and so that pretty much buttons that up. Okay, now on the passenger side for the inner fender well liner here, I did a little bit different in the driver's side. This factory hole here, I just took a zip tie and tied it around one of the coolant lines, which is directly behind here, and that just nicely pulled this back in there. Now this side for some reason is shaped, it's cut a little different. The other one is more straight across. This one drops down here and then it comes up around, and so that just pulled that bottom corner right back real nice there. Now I don't have to worry about this because it's going to be hitting the metal here before it hits this anyway, and I think we got plenty of distance there. So in conclusion, what I would say is if you don't want to do any cutting in your vehicle, then just don't try to run 34s without doing at least a 4-inch lift. But if you don't mind doing some cutting and making a few adjustments, you can do 34s with only 2 inches of lift. But it's absolutely maxed out. I mean, I wouldn't want to go any more. On these N-Fab nerf steps that I put on, the driver's side went on great, no problems. The passenger side has the coolant lines running along just inside the rocker panel, and the brackets that they put on, they stepped them in a little bit on the brackets that go up inside, and they had them for some reason, they were in too far and they didn't even reach. There was probably about I don't know, it was probably almost an inch of a gap out to the frame, or I'm sorry, out to the rocker panel, the metal inside there. So what I did to beef it up was took some pieces of flat steel and bolted them on top of those brackets that they stuck out against the frame to stiffen it up. Also, when it came to installing these nerf steps, there was probably more work involved in removing all that Z71 paraphernalia on the bottom, which is consists of the steps themselves for the first thing, and then there's that plastic, big long plastic strip. You got to, there's clips that's clipped on with. You got to take that loose, get it off. Then there's a big metal channel under there you have to take off, and then there's about 5 brackets yet on each side. There is a lot of stuff down there, and everything is riveted into the body, into the rocker panel. So there ends up being a lot of holes down there. So if you don't want to do that, then don't bother touching it, because there is. But just looking, you don't see the holes unless you get down that low and look up under. But there is a lot of holes underneath, but I think it looks a lot better with these steps on. Fuel economy is, I'm sure, down from what it was. I'm sure that's hurting quite a bit with all this, but I won't really know until I get the speedometer adjusted, and I haven't got that done yet, so I'm not sure as far as fuel economy how much of a difference that makes. I hope you enjoyed riding along with me on this project, and make sure you comment and let me know what you think, pro or con, about the whole project. That's it. Till next time.